online at landisbc.com. From ESPN, our friend Adam Schefter joins us. Shefty, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, gentlemen. The sky's not falling, right?
I was just about to say, Shefty, you have no idea how refreshing of a week it has been. Now, the Sixers haven't really helped because Embiid and Paul George are out tonight, but that's a conversation for later on because I know how invested you are in the NBA.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Eagles, you have no idea how refreshing this week has been.
Come off a win like that, defense plays well, offense looks better. Everything, the sun's shining brighter today. The temperature feels warmer. Food tastes better. Everything's nice, right? It's great.
It's beautiful. Now, I will ask you, the offense looked much better this past weekend, and they even looked better, even though 20 points doesn't really tell you that story. They did look better against Cleveland. We just unfortunately had to talk about the head coach for a week because of his antics. The offense has also looked differently in terms of the style of play. It looks more like a Kellen Moore offense. It looks like they are running the ball more than throwing with Jalen Hurts. He only attempted 14 passes. Do you believe that that's something they might continue to do, or do you think that was more matchup-based the last 2 weeks?
Well, again, they were playing with the lead last week, so you're not trying to throw the ball. You're not playing from behind. You're not playing catch-up. It's much easier to run the ball than it is to throw the ball, obviously. But, listen, Kellen's an asset, and they should be leaning on him to get things done. And whatever it takes to come up with the best offensive attack should be done, and the smartest teams adjust and adapt to their strengths. I don't know how they've done that. I don't know that, who is running what, who's calling what, if there have been changes there. I think my guess would be, as much as anything, it comes down to the fact that it's much different when you're, crushing a team and you can do what you want and impose your will. You're not going to get away from running the football there like they did on Sunday. So I think it's more of a function of that would be my guess.
Adam, everybody's been excited by the Vic Fangio defense and what they've managed to do. Coming off Cleveland and the Giants, there are a lot of questions about how much is tangible, how much is real, and how much might just be, beating up on bad teams. From your knowledge of the Fangio system, is it too much to ask that this defense is 7th in points allowed in the NFL?
I think that's what Vic does. I just think he's the defensive fixer-upper. And that when he's back there, things are going to get better. That's the way it can happen. Now, this will be a tougher test. And Cincinnati is a team that, where they got back B.J. Hill, that's made a difference in their defensive front. So a defense that was softer earlier in the year has played better lately. So that's something to keep in mind here. I don't think it's the same Bengals defense that they're getting. And the Bengals offense, we know what that is. I mean, they're dangerous with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, all the weapons. Chase Brown's playing very well for the Bengals. So I think they're in a pretty good spot right now. And I think Vic's defense has played better and better. And I think guys are starting to get the system. It's showing in the results. And, you got to be pretty pleased with where they're at right now off the last 2 games against inferior offenses. Yes. So here's a better offense. Let's see how the defense holds up now.
Shefty, speaking of this Bengals team, are we starting to see more of what you believe is real of Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals? Because they got off to a very slow start, but the last couple of games have looked a lot better for Cincinnati, just like it has for the Eagles.
Yeah. Well, this is a team that has gotten better. And I think, what were they? Were they 0-4? I think they were 0-4. Now
I think their first,
they
beat the Panthers for their first win, so I think they were 1-3. And then they lost to Baltimore, that crazy, 38-35 game.
Right, so they were 1-4.
Right.
And now they're 2-4? Or 2 no, they
3-4, I believe.
They are 3-4.
Okay, well, you look at the Bengals schedule, despite the 1-3 start, and you say, this is a team that absolutely can go to the playoffs. Like, they look like a team that, in that conference, I think is going to be good enough to get there. And, even if they fall to 3-5 this weekend, I still think they have the talent to make the kind of push to be there in the end and to be a dangerous team. So, yes, I think they've gotten better. I think the Eagles have gotten better, and it sets up an interesting matchup between these two teams on Sunday.
Adam, I don't know about you, but I was the little cousin in the family, much younger than a lot of my other cousins. So I was always sitting at the kiddie table, and I'm sort of tired of the Eagles being sent to the kiddie table. Another flex out of like a nationally focused game for the second consecutive week. Now, obviously, one of them being against Cincinnati, who was off to a bad start. Now, one of them being Jacksonville, who has not been to a good start. Is this more of a function of those teams being bad, or are the Eagles not as sexy to the national audience?
I think it's a little bit of both right now. I think that the Eagles didn't have the kind of start that I think that they'd want. It was pretty good, but not great. And, you know, flexing out of this Bengals game, as we're talking about it, I say to myself, that's an interesting game that I actually want to watch on Sunday. Eagles-Jacksonville is a function, I think, of the opponent. We've seen enough of the Jaguars in London in the last 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, I'm good right now. I think it's a function of that. So, and the first time they were flexed out, I believe it was for Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels.
Yes, it is. And now Jaden Daniels is not playing.
Well, we don't know if he's going to play or not. It doesn't look great, but we'll see. So I think the first time the Eagles are flexed out, it's more to do with the fact that these two young quarterbacks are very appealing. And the next time they're flexed out, I think it has more to do with the Jaguars. And I don't think either time it has as much to do with the Eagles, but they're caught up in it both times.
Speaking of Adam Schefter on the Comcast Business Hotline, Schefter, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Jordan Davis was a first-round draft pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. They stuck with their plan of building in the trenches. A lot of people wanted Kyle Hamilton, me and Johnny. And they took Jordan Davis, and I wasn't against the pick. He played 21% of the snaps in this past game for the Philadelphia Eagles. Does Howie Roseman say, oh, man, that sucks? Or does he go, hey, good for you, Vic, for figuring something out with this defense?
No, I don't think he thinks this sucks. I think that it's a work in progress, and they're trying to figure out the best way to use these guys. And, again, we're coming off 2 wins here, right? So what's the big deal? So if Jordan Davis is playing 21 plays a game and they're winning every week, do you care?
No, I just wondered the mindset of a general manager who used a first-round pick on him, and then in year 3 of his NFL career, he's only playing 21% of the snaps. And
21 snaps,
excuse me. And then guys like Moro Ojomo are playing more than him, even though it's working for the team. I'm just wondering the mentality of the GM. What's going through his head today?
I think what's going through his head today is we got a game against Cincinnati on Sunday, got the trade deadline a week from Tuesday. Is there anything else that we could do to make this team better? That's what I think he's going to do. I don't think he's thinking, boy, Jordan Davis played 21 plays. I don't think he's looking at it like that.
All right, I know you hear things. You don't have big ears, but you've got big ears literally for the business. What are you hearing? Are you hearing Howie? Is it Howie's season? Is he stalking anybody, you believe?
Not that I have specifically heard of. I think he's always making calls. They're always making calls. These things come together quick, right? Like DeAndre Hopkins. I just began to hear about it yesterday. Now, look, we all could talk about the Chiefs and Hopkins and how much sense it makes, but all of a sudden it comes together like that, in a 24-hour period when you weren't expecting that. So you're asking me, is Howie working on anything? And I can honestly say there's nothing right now that I know of. I also wouldn't be surprised if on Monday or Tuesday next week or Monday or Tuesday the next week, right before the deadline, I got a call, hey, you might want to check on the Eagles and this. Like, that's just because that's what he does. And I think it becomes even more true if they win the game this week. Who do they play next Sunday after this week?
That's the Jags.
Okay, so
at home.
Yeah, so if you can find a way to beat the Bengals, is the Bengals game in Cincy?
Yes. So then you'd be 5-2, and then the Jags at home, you could potentially be sitting 6-2 almost halfway through the season.
And I'm just telling, I'm not speaking to Howie Roseman's mind. I'm speaking to a general manager and any team or organization's mindset. If you're 6-2 going into the trade deadline, you feel emboldened and empowered to go do things. Like the 49ers were in a good spot last year, and they're like, we got this extra comp pick. Oh, and they checked around on a bunch of things, and boom, they trade for Chase Young the day of the deadline. I don't think that was something that they were thinking 2 weeks out of the deadline, but they won some games leading into the deadline, felt good, felt like we can make our run here, we're in a good spot, and we want to be the best team possible going into the postseason. So, look, if the Eagles don't win on Sunday and then they win the next week, I still think they're going to be making their calls, and I don't think much changes there. But my point is, psychologically, if you're coming off, at that point it would be, 4 straight wins?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Heading into the trade. There's a little bit of buyer's confidence, like a little bit like when the stock market's up, you don't mind like spending the extra $20 at dinner or shopping or whatever it may be.
Do you think there will be players of note to buy? So you were pretty emphatic last week. Mason Crosby not going, or Max Crosby, not going anywhere. But we have seen some
Mason Crosby's available.
yeah, he is available.
Crosby's much harder. Yeah.
We have seen some players of note. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins this morning, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper. Is it going to be a big name buyer-seller market, do you think, this year in the trade deadline?
Well, I got to be honest. I say this every year. The activity's picked up, so I don't want to squash anything. Ideally, it'd be nice to have it quiet down a little bit. But we've already seen 3 big trades. Adams, Cooper, and
Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
I mean, the NFL usually doesn't get 3 big trades in the weeks leading up to the trade deadline. Although, more and more you're seeing these teams with the mindset of the Eagles to try to make moves. And so they become more and more possible, likely. And so I'm sure there's going to be more. I'm trying to talk myself out of that because I just know the 2 weeks that are ahead for me, selfishly and personally. Like, oh, boy, I just want to get through these 2 weeks here and get to November 6th. By the way, I mean, it's not like there's anything else going on Tuesday, November 5th anyway.
Yeah, nothing at all. Yeah, I mean, what a strange day that's going to be. Can I ask you this? God. Is there anything fool's gold you believe halfway through the season? Is there a team that you go, I'm not really buying what they're doing, positively or negatively? Maybe there's a team that you think is lying in the weeds, or if there's a team that's maybe riding high right now that you're not truly believing in?
Well, I do believe in the Washington Commanders, unfortunately for you.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. Do you know they're going to be an underdog, projected to be an underdog in one of their last 10 games?
Is that right?
That's incredible.
If Jaden Daniels plays.
That's if Jaden Daniels plays, exactly. But, I mean, they're 1 out of 10, and that was the game at the Eagles. It's incredible. They have an easy schedule.
So the Commanders are going to be favored in 9 of their 10 last 10 games, right?
If Jaden Daniels was healthy. Yes, we got to assume. Isn't that amazing? It is. It's amazing. Yeah. Their schedule's very easy. Yeah. And that causes the Eagles, a game like Cincinnati means even more this weekend to not fall another game behind.
Yeah, I agree. So, again, I just come back to our point. I said it, kept saying it. I kept trying to warn you.
Oh, I knew Coach Bro was going to have him going. I know he was going to have them all with his bumper stickers and everything. They're playing well for him. Dan Quinn's a hell of a motivator.
Hey, you know what? In speaking to some people there, the one thing that they say is he is incredible at instilling, whatever the word is, implementing. He is great at implementing a culture. Like
he's. I saw it firsthand, Adam, and it's one of the most impressive jobs that I ever saw in him creating that. I think his worst time as a head coach was the 60 Minutes on Sunday afternoons, but strategy-wise. But, I mean, as far as a culture and everything, I don't think there's much better. And that scares me.
And he's done that. And so when you have a coach who does that with a quarterback who's Lamar 2.0, that's a dangerous combination in your division.
Last thing before we let you go, Schefter, my brain's spiraling now because of the trade deadline discussion. At what point does a team realize we have a chance or we don't? And like the Jets are 2-5 this year, but the Jets just traded for Devontae Adams. and they have playoff expectations. The Dolphins are 2-4, but they're about to get their quarterback back in Tua Tagovailoa. The Rams are 2-4, but they're just 2 games back of the Seahawks. At what point does a team go, we got a chance or we don't?
I don't think they view it as much like that. I think it's kind of a feel and a projection, and you're looking at your cap and you're projecting where it's going and you're assessing your chances. I don't think it's like a light goes on with these teams in these final 2 weeks and you say, oh, boy, we're not going to be able to make it this season. I think teams have a pretty good idea of where they're at, how realistic their chances are. That's factored in. Now, again, are these next 2 weeks important in helping cement those feelings? Yeah, of course. But I think these organizations have a pretty good idea, a pretty good understanding of where they're at today heading into, week 8 here? Week 8, is that correct?
Week 8.
Yep.
Great. Love it.
Shefty, you're the man. By the way, you're welcome. We blessed ESPN with our voices, John and I, during the Saquon
Sunday NFL Countdown.
The Saquon special. So you're welcome. That we
tried to help your ratings along.
Yeah, we tried our best, Shefty. We hope it didn't dip.
You know what? It's funny. I just realized this. I did not see that piece.
You should.
Because I'd like to. I'm going to. I bounce around. Sometimes they throw me onto the fantasy football special.
Right.
Or the fantasy football show. So I must have been doing it because not until you just said that right now that I realized that I didn't get to see that piece.
Well, hopefully,
Sal played a small part in it.
Yeah, it was mainly us. It was mainly us, Shefty. We were the story, not even Saquon.
Don't tell Sal that.
Yeah. You carried it. That's good.
We did. Nice Shefty, we appreciate it as always, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great week, guys.
Thank you, buddy.
There he is, Adam Schefter on the